Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum's podcast called Stay Curious. I'm your host, Mark Marquette. We're so glad you've joined us today. And besides me is one of our popular guests that is a structural engineer and worked for NASA in both the Apollo and shuttle eras. And we watched a beautiful rocket launch today. Gary
We
Allgire.
sure did, right?
Hey,
Just a
Gary.
few minutes ago.
Great to see you there. Yes, we've come on late because we wanted to see this happened today. And the printer's almost out of ink, but there is the first time a New Glenn rocket has launched a payload to space and spiked the landing out there on in the Atlantic Ocean. And I've seen that barge up close, parked at Port Canaveral, and I can't believe that they didn't leave a little bit more room
Well,
in between it there. But
that's a lot bigger barge than what SpaceX uses. I was really impressed with the size of it because it shocked me because it is huge.
yeah,
It really is.
But it's got a building on each end of it, but you explained the technique of landing here, Gary.
Well,
just 10 minutes ago, folks.
When we first saw it, all we could see off to the side was water being splashed up in steam, and first reaction was, well, it missed the barge. But what it really did is it came down and it hovered and then slid over and then landed, which is different than what SpaceX does.
So it sure did.
Yeah, it was kind of neat.
It was kind of neat.
Yeah.
And good for them. SpaceX or Blue Origin investing billions of dollars here on the Space Coast.
Yes, they have.
I keep saying, boy, they sure build some pretty buildings.
They have a lot of buildings.
But the main thing is getting buildings built in outer space by them, I think, is what they want to do. But if you've seen this complex across from Kennedy Space Center's entrance now.
The visitor center.
Yeah, the visitor center. It's amazing.
It's huge. I mean, you just can't believe how many buildings they have, how tall they are, and how large they are.
And 8 years too. Yeah. I drove by it when it was just a Florida the forest,
bushes,
swamp, and stuff like that.
Swamp bugs.
And so that's where your Amazon money's gone, right there.
Yeah.
Packages delivered, headed to Mars. It's a Mars probe. 2 spacecraft that are going to study the atmosphere of Mars and try to figure out what happened to the sustainable atmosphere that in there.
I put ink in.
Pardon me?
I put ink in.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Should be able to print it now. The blue was out.
All right. Thank you very much there. Anita Truex there telling me that we got new ink in the printer there. This was a little bit weak there. Thank you, Anita, for telling me about that live on air here. And Amazon money going there. These Mars probes, though, Gary, every 2 years we have an opportunity to launch something to Mars because that's the ratio of how it comes closest to us.
Yes,
all right, and every 2 years we're about as close as we can be to each other. So they want to launch a little bit ahead of that, and but this is not a science. This is only a scientific probe. It has nothing to do with returning us to the moon or Mars. And if we go to Mars with human beings, we're going to need some infrastructure there, orbiting and communication satellites. They're using the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter that's now 12 years old as the source of information coming from the 2 rovers up. And we've never put a replacement up there. But need like a TDRS, Tracking Data Relay satellite, that there's 6 and I think 1 in reserve around our globe. That is what the communications they use for
that's what
the International Space Station.
Yeah, and for a lot of missions we use the TDRS satellite. In fact, that's the main thing that helped us on the shuttle program is how the communication loop went. I don't know if you've ever heard the story, but when the astronaut is talking to the launch director, it's not directly from pad 39A or B to the launch LCC. What it does is a signal is sent downrange to a station. It's beamed up to a satellite, to another satellite, beamed down to Houston, goes through a receiver down there, and it's shipped up to their control room, and then back up and around and back around, and you don't even notice that it did that loop, just so that they can talk to each other from the pad
3.5 miles away from the
and so they break it out so they can hear what's going on at Houston.
Uh-huh.
So that's how the whole loop goes, and it's not a direct from
That's
the
interesting.
LCC to the pad.
And that's why Gary's sitting beside me today, because he's a wealth of information like that. And we're going to talk about some space history today with Gemini 12 being the very important end of this 10 mission program in 1965 and 66. My favorite period of time as a adolescent teenager. Just eat up with it. We'll talk about how important that was, what was needed to really happen. Real quick, we've got some space news about that interstellar comet whipping through our solar system, about to leave it. Yep, some of you saw some aurora last night. Aurora happens almost every night, but when it gets down below into the continental United States and above Canada, then it's really a major storm from the sun. And just Gary and I got to look at the Gemini kind of retrospective in a way of what we need to accomplish, why it was so important. And so hope that you enjoy our little program today. Let Gary chime in whenever he wants. GoHistoryTravel.org is our sponsors, Gary. They've got a neat little website that has very unorthodox look at history, where the Ramanujan family, shown here, presenting us with a check, and that's why we love them, and they're sponsoring us frequently on our events. They go and look at where the high school was, the junior high. Go talk to teachers even and stuff like that. Photograph. That's Barat on the left there. If he could get in the delivery room where Neil Armstrong was born, he'd get a photo of that and post it on there. And Mal in the middle, the mom, and Rama on the right there. Great people and great supporters of our museum, and one of our 6 or 7 sponsors that do support us, that we want to tout on our program. So, yeah, grab this screenshot when it was in a hold. That was about 10 till 3, right?
Yeah, we went through 2 holes.
Okay.
One for water. The deluge system didn't work.
All right.
It wasn't working. And then the second hole, they never did really tell us what the hole was, but they picked it up and we launched. The timing was off. When they hit T0, that's when the water turned on.
Yes.
And it sat there for a little bit before it launched. So actually, T0 was later than what they predicted for some reason.
That's Jetty Park, where some of you have vacationed. Beautiful park there. You see the boats come in and out of there. The rocket is right above the person in the pink shirt there. It's right above him, right there, left of screen there. And, of course, a view of it on the pad there. So we didn't have anything, of course, to get for the launch, but I knew that we would be talking about it. We are Marty Winkle, our co-producer over here. Marty, how would you say we're about 15 miles away from the pad here, maybe further?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That sound about right?
Yeah.
When we're over here at the river at Spaceview Park, we're 9 miles away from pad 39A, or the VAB basically. So I would think that's on the other side, back at pad 36,
It's
sticking
pretty
out
far
there right
down,
beside the lighthouse. And
It's not far off of NASA Causeway. If NASA Causeway went to the pad, it would be right. It's just north of that.
we heard a little bit of rumble,
Not much.
not much, but a nice little vapor trail. This is a liquid fueled rocket, right?
It's methane. I think they use, and it didn't have a big long flame like we do with the Atlas V's or even the shuttle when it flew, which was kind of unusual. It's more like a Titan when they flew, because they use liquid hydrogen and oxygen, and they didn't put out just a blue flame, and there was nothing, big long flame of fire. It wasn't there.
Well, it's exciting to see, and now we know where in relationship of our parking lot here, where that pad's going to be on future launches that we hope are frequent here on the coast. And I was at a Museums of Brevard meeting this morning, sitting next to Becky Zingarella. She's the executive director of the lighthouse out there. And we shown some pictures. I should have shown a picture on my phone, Marty, of the lighthouse. We've been showing them. I didn't think to rack one up, But this is within a mile and a half of the lighthouse. I was going to see if I could pull a picture up here real quick.
If you Google
No, I
on
don't think
Google
I can.
Maps, you can see the
So
lighthouse.
Becky's is a little concerned is that that lighthouse could suffer some damage somehow. Now the last New Glenn launch, Hangar C, had some broken windows.
Oh, is that right?
And,
Okay.
and that's right beside the lighthouse, the famous Hangar C, where they got all kinds of the old timey rockets in there. So, Gary, what do we have here? Well, we're excited for the launch. Got happy for Blue Origin. Thousands of people are working here, living here now, and calling our region home, just like you did at one time.
Yes,
with
it is.
the
Yes.
Apollo, and you and Marty coming down here.
Yeah, we came down here at the
uh,
very, very beginning.
Yeah, so you can probably sense a little bit of the excitement that they have that
Oh,
they got
yeah.
a successful
Yeah.
mission.
It is an exciting time to be in Brevard County because of all the launches.
Mhm.
And I don't know, did we make 100 this year already? Or
Marty, with the numbers up to what, 95 or 6?
I think this launch, I think this made it 96, maybe 97. I think it's 96.
Okay, and we got another one tonight?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Atlas 5,
Yeah, Atlas
full dressed with
Yeah.
5 strap-ons. Yeah,
Oh, man,
that's
that'd be
gonna make a lot of
that'll
noise.
make a noise, yeah.
Yeah, 10 something tonight. We look it up there. Let me get to. I had bopped up here to see who's watching today. We hope Gary Allgire makes you say, "Oh my gosh, we got to listen to Gary today," and that's what we got a lot watching today. Rosalie Jubilee and Doug Forrest. Rosalie, I wonder how that sounded over your neck of the woods there, Merritt Island. Steve Jokums, he congratulates Team Blue. We're all happy for him. Keith Sewell's in Arkansas watching today. Thank you, Keith. Gary Gerald's up in Collins, Georgia. And Dean Babcock, I believe, is up in Illinois. Man Space is Mitch Rothman in Colorado. Tom Usiak, good afternoon to you in Pennsylvania. I had a turtleneck shirt on, sweater, and I had to take it off finally today. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
It was a little bit chilly.
yeah, it reminded me of Georgia when we left.
Oh, did it?
It got down to 31 that night. We had 2 nights before we left up there to come home to Florida.
And of course, we're going to have our beautiful people on our program tell us the exact facts of things. Like Steve Jokum says, it's liquid methane and liquid oxygen.
Mhm.
Second stage is hydrogen and oxygen. So the liquid methane is a new fuel being used
Yes, it is.
specifically by them. And they have their own factory to make it, I believe.
Well, Starship uses methane too, so.
Okay, very good. Up there. So you got a question for Gary. You've seen many of his shows. Your show on the Russian shuttle Buran has over 2,000 views, and all of your shows have been excellent. And one of my favorite was the Apollo 1. And we watched a horrifyingly AI, it seemed, Apollo 1
Generated, yeah.
program that, my gosh, folks, don't believe everything you see or hear on YouTube. They had so much misconceptions, and it was so cavalier, this man and woman talking.
Yes,
It was very disrespectful to the lives, I think,
it was.
of the astronauts, that
Yeah.
it was just like, NASA knew that this wasn't going to work, and it was
Yeah.
filled with flammable materials, and the astronauts argued about it. No, they didn't. And
No.
yes, it was filled with flammable materials. That was an oversight.
Well, they said that the astronauts didn't want all the Velcro in there, but they are the ones that wanted all the Velcro
Yeah.
in there. And that was the problem we had with them, is that they always wanted to have things so they could stick it to the wall. And that's why theoretically they carried duct tape with them so that they could stick things after it was banned to have Velcro in there. We could have Velcro, but it was very small squares.
Mhm.
And it had to be so distance apart. That was what they did after the fire. And astronauts didn't like that, but that's what they had to do. So, and Velcro, and duct tape we were banned to have that in the capsule. We couldn't use it because of its flammability, plus it left a high residue.
Duct tape.
Duct tape did.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So the Apollo 13 now, the story is that's when they decided, came up at the last minute on how to take the lunar module cartridge and use them
Yeah,
on the
scrubbing the CO2 out.
or using the command module one, scrubbing it. And I didn't think about it at the time until I heard that they had actually developed that during Apollo 10. And then they look at it again and they said, why did they have 1-inch strip pieces of duct tape? That's unusual. It's not supposed to be in the spacecraft. So I think in every mission, they probably had some duct tape
Okay.
for this.
In other words, they weren't supposed to have duct tape
No.
according to specs on Apollo 13 that we know was used to tape.
Yeah,
But they even said, you know, an engineer did a model of it.
yes, but that was, but that, I was told when I was working there that Don Arabian was the gentleman that came up with that idea during the mission.
Okay.
And then after I did the broadcast, I started looking around, and there is a story out there that it was actually developed for Apollo 10 because they were going to the moon, but they weren't going to land. But just in case something happened and they lost like fuel cells, they could convert over and use the lunar command module cartridges in the lunar module. And that's the story I've heard. And looking back at the duct tape, I kind of agree that really did happen because they did do a lot of troubleshooting what ifs under Honeycutt. You know, he had to keep telling them to quit doing this because you got too many of these things. And that's what our engineers did here also. The guys that were working fluids and working all the electronic systems, they were always coming up with, what if this happens? How do we get around that? And so that's what one of the great things about engineering is that we did do that kind of stuff. So if the day came, there was an emergency, we had the answers.
Don Arabian, one of the hidden figures of NASA.
Oh, what a guy.
He wasn't hidden in Johnson Space Center. He was boisterous, foul-mouthed, but brilliant man.
Well,
one of these guys that, you know, he'd open up a door, you'd say, and throw a firebomb in there.
That was his reputation. When he would come to the Cape, they would go through the halls. Somebody in the project office would run through the halls saying, Don Arabian is in the building, close your doors.
They called him Mad Don, by the way, was his nickname.
And then I was out in Colorado at a company called Ball Brothers, and we were talking about the docking latches for the design. And out of nowhere, someone came through the hall and said, Don Arabian is out here. Close your door. And the JSC rep that was there says, how the hell did he know we were here? And so the Ball Brothers guy says, who is this guy? And sure enough, the door opens up. He steps in about halfway and throws out all these what ifs, and are you looking at this? And then leaves. And the Ball Brother engineer says, what is he talking about? What do we do? How are we? And the JSC guy says, calm down. He does this all the time. Ignore him and just continue on with our program.
He was the ombudsman in many
Yes,
ways.
yeah.
They had a control, what do I want to call it? Not disaster central, but they had a central place in Johnson Space Center with a lot of phones and a lot of smart people that Don was over.
Yeah.
And when an anomaly came up, as they always did, he would go to this room and they would figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And you could hear him yelling and screaming and
Oh, yeah.
cussing from halfway down the hall. And I love him because I met him. He's one of the guys that I met when he's in his 90s. He was funny. He was just really a fun guy. He loved talking about stuff. He was.
And John Young was sort of that, but John Young was common sense guy, but he would always come up with something in a meeting, and he says, well, what about this? And everybody go, what are you talking about? Didn't realize he's talking about something serious, and we better pay attention to John Young.
Don, what we'll do one day, Gary, is we'll harvest some pictures of these people like T.J. O'Malley and have you just give us a little behind the scene stuff that you're not going to get in trouble anymore.
Okay. No, and put Gunnar Wynn in there too, because
we'll put Gunter in there and T.J. O'Malley, people that we talk about that you can't put the face on sometimes, but I can. Marty will come up with George Page, maybe.
And I can
come up with George Skurla.
Oh yeah, George Skurla. Yeah, let's do that. We'll get about 7 or 8 of the real personalities of the Cape here in Johnson Space Center and do a little story on them.
It was very interesting to work through those times. We had some very interesting managers and people that made this program work.
Yeah, and it was without, though we love the fact that we do have political correctness and things
Yeah.
back. This was a culture where you got yelled at, sometimes cussed at,
Oh, yeah.
and human resources didn't care because they'd be
No.
cussing and yelling back at you, maybe. But
Oh,
it's just a
no.
different time, and we all know that.
Yeah.
And of course, it was chauvinistic in many ways for women, and we're so glad that it's not like that anymore.
No, it's not. And same thing with African Americans. We didn't have about two, I think, in the program, but they were very excellent engineers and people. So it was a pleasure working with all these people at the time.
Absolutely. We got some great comments there. I see one from John Doe. BQ1XT says to Gary, did you ever meet Kurt Davis?
Yes, I did. In fact, I came in my office one day and my lead engineer says, Gary, they've requested you to go over and talk to Dr. Debus in his office. He wants to know about the docking system from the Apollo program. So I gathered up some of my pictures and sketches and stuff like that, and a couple of drawings, and I went over now his office, the headquarters building is 3 floors. His office was on the 4th floor, which was a separate building, you can say, on top of the roof up there. Glass walls on 2 of the sides. Beautiful, beautiful thing. Had 10-foot ceilings in it. And I went up there and walked in, and it was just him, and he had an aide with him. And he introduced himself, and he said, we're going to go over and sit at this couch in the corner over here by one of the windows. And we had a little round table. He sat on a chair and he's across from me, and I sat on the couch, and then the other gentleman sat next to me. And then he ordered in coffee and cookies, and I sat there for about 45 minutes to an hour talking to him about that. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. He was very, very kind to me, and I just enjoyed it very much. I did offer him to come over to the O&C building. I says, come on over, I will take you inside the spacecraft and you can have a personal tour. Unfortunately, he said no. And I really regretted that. I think he would have really enjoyed it if he could have came over, but I don't know if he felt he was being too disruptive to the team or what, but a very wonderful man.
I have found that point in some upper management is they didn't do things like that because they didn't want to look like they were grandstanding or showboating.
Yeah.
You know, you could understand that correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, in there. But excellent. These are why Gary's here. Wonderful stories. And these are the manager people that I've gotten to understand thanks to you and people like Jay Honeycutt, former Kane Center director, as well as shuttle manager Bob Seek, another one.
Mike Leinbach.
Mike Leinbach,
Yeah.
too. By the way, we had a wonderful, recognized our 2 docents in the room here, Gary and Marty, at a little docent reception we had last night. Bob Seek and Mike Leinbach were there, 2 launch directors. It was just very nice and something I didn't take any pictures of because I was sort of emceeing the thing. And
What, 5 or 6 docents that got little plaques. It
6
was
or
very
7, yeah.
wonderful. Nice
hope you
food.
enjoyed that.
Oh, we did. It was very nice.
Yeah, and we showed the Honeycutt video that we're going to show here after the first of the year. We promise we'll do that. We'll probably release it to the hounds here pretty soon. Anyway, thanks for reminiscing about all this NASA legend stuff. Quickly, in the news, appearing once in a while, is this interstellar comet, Atlas 3, the 3rd interstellar comet. That's what 3I is. It's not an alien anything. It did not send radio signals directly to the Earth the other day, like some stupid tease on Facebook or YouTube is doing.
Got to be very careful.
I think this is fear mongering, and we were disciplined on YouTube for fear mongering. An episode. Remember that, Marty? When I opened up for a War of the Worlds type thing, you know, extra, we're going to get hit by a comet, everybody duck type of thing. And they flagged that program. We're up to 1,400 episodes. That was probably about episode 200, Marty. Well, the first 200 were on YouTube, Facebook only. So it was probably about episode 500. But they wouldn't show it until we asked for a review because their AI flagged it as inciting
Yes, I can see that.
public excitement.
Yeah.
Well, look at this stuff. This is absolutely false. There's no scientific value to it.
No.
It is not an alien spaceship. It is this, a comet from another solar system, by God, that's whipping through here at 200,000 miles an hour. They can trace it back to maybe somewhere in the, I forget what constellation, maybe Sagittarius, I think. But it come from a solar system far, far away, and it's the third one we've discovered in about 5 years, and therefore there's hundreds that we never saw or discovered, you know, in there. It has grown a tail. This is more of a cometary tail. Let me get my this stunning view of interstellar comet 3 Atlas reveals the cosmic visitor's ion tail has grown dramatically longer and more structured, a sign of activity as it journeys through the inner solar system. It is a snowball, a snowdrift going through. It is pretty big, about 5 miles. This is image from the Virtual Telescope project. An ion tail forms when the sun's ultraviolet radiation strips electrons from gas molecules released by the comet, turning them into charged ions. There's a gas tail and also a debris tail. This tail differs from the dust tail, which tends to be yellowish white and curves along the comet's orbital path. That's what we plow through Halley's Comet's debris in the Orionid meteor shower, for example, type of thing. This is the third confirmed interstellar object ever detected. It came from the top, all right? You see where the Earth is. It went close to Mars about a month ago, and then it went behind the sun. As you can see where the blue Earth is and the sun. It went behind the sun for about 2 weeks, and now it's come out from behind the sun, and it's headed out of our solar system past Jupiter's orbit where it came in. But what is unusual is it has high concentrations of carbon. It shows some spectrum that has concentrations of other elements that are not formed in the solar system, our sun system, and that's why it's a rare opportunity to observe this. Where was it formed? What was that solar system like where it was formed? And it seems to, and they're actually looking for maybe an element that's not even in our solar system, something new that's in there. So very exciting, but it's not an interstellar alien craft. If it was, I guarantee you, it would do a U-turn and come right to the blue marble covered with water.
Yeah.
Because our resources would aliens would want our resources,
Yes,
particularly our liquid water. That's where the great astrophysicist, A Brief History of Time, in the wheelchair,
Oh, yeah.
having a moment here.
Yeah, I know who you talked about.
He said, "Be careful what you ask for." He thinks aliens encountering Earth would be violent and want to wipe us out. And I'm
a good
thinking of the great
possibility. You don't-
physicist Hawking, Stephen
Yeah,
Hawking.
yeah.
Thank you, Steve Jokums. He was about to type that in there. Yeah, Stephen Hawking said he thinks that any aliens encountering Earth would be hostile. And guess what? Look at the Earth and alien countries invading alien countries. You know, we've been very hostile to our neighbors.
Yes.
Always. So, I don't know. But anyway, here is an artist. The other two interstellar. This is about 5 miles in diameter. This is the Roman Colosseum, and an idea of the other two weren't probably even this big. One was called Umamau. I'm going to say is what they called it. Umawa Mawa has some Hawaiian friendly name to it. It was actually flat like a pancake and narrow. And Borisov was more like a comet. This is not an actual photo of it. These are both artists' renditions of what they were, because the other one, Borisov, 2 years ago, did outgas also, but didn't get a big tail. So these are pristine objects. And Gary, we should be in the 20th century able to mount a quick rocket trip to this with an unmanned probe. It's a shame that we don't have like things on standby to go
Go look at it.
investigate visitors.
Well, that thing's traveling pretty fast. I don't know if we could catch up with it.
You're right. Well,
Yeah,
we'd
it was-
have to see if we could intercept it
Yeah.
somewhere along the way and
Well,
not catch
but
up.
it would
but
be a
good.
very, very short time to look at it.
So that's happening up there. Interstellar comet that's is causing a lot of false alien talk that just is fear mongering.
Yeah.
And you heard it here on the American Space Museum's program. Well, of course, a lot of you last night was anticlimactic after Tuesday night's barrage of solar winds hitting the Earth at the poles, creating sensational aurora all the way down to places that never see it, like Florida, Arizona, and that's El Salvador. That picture on the bottom
Oh, okay.
there got reddish glow from the ions of oxygen being excited. And there is Mitch Rothman last night over Colorado, the West Colorado there.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't like the pictures he sent before where you had the beautiful red. But like this is in Minnesota, a beautiful wind structure there, wind turbine.
Oh, yeah.
Wind turbines aren't in Florida for some reason. Are they?
Thank good. No.
Are they banned or just?
I don't know. Yeah, they don't have any. I've seen them up in South Carolina and North Carolina, but I haven't seen any here.
Mhm. Oh, Texas and so
Texas,
forth,
yeah.
covered with them.
And those things are really huge. You don't know how big they are
Oh.
until you get near one.
They're huge.
And they're amazing, but they're also they have a lot of problems with them.
I have in around Cincinnati, Dayton area. I saw signs: no wind machines,
Nice.
no windmills, no power windmills. And I go, what's that up about? They make a noise.
They do make a noise.
That is a humming noise that drives people nuts who live near it.
It's true, and they also interfere with their televisions and stuff like that. And of course, they kill birds when they run into them, but they do catch on fire and fall down.
Yep, build nests on them, stuff like that. But technology that's used to harvest clean energy, and beautiful aurora there up in Minnesota. All the culprit is sunspots on the sun. The sun has a 12-year cycle of highs and lows. The peaks are 6 years apart. It is in a high solar cycle of activity where there you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There might be 25 sunspots on there. Live view that's on spaceweather.com. These sunspots emit plasma from the violent electromagnetic event that causes them. It's like two magnetic poles hitting each other, and they make the sun cooler in that area, and that's where they emit this plasma out there. And I'll give you a quick history lesson if you didn't watch it yesterday, science lesson I mean. This is constantly going on, the solar wind, but 6 years from now there won't be any sunspots, and the aurora will be very low and not as intense, and you'll have to go up to Iceland to see it, and not down here in Georgia where Gary Gerald was. And
Well, yeah, I've seen pictures from Georgia from the last couple of days.
Absolutely. And that's what's going on. This aurora happens mostly at about 60-mile area. The 150 mile to 60 is where it's at. The green is the most common because that's oxygen being ionized. It takes more energy and to break up a nitrogen atom that we have, of course, more of those in our atmosphere. But think of a neon tube, and the colors of your neon tubes are made by different gases that are in those tubes.
Yep.
So very cool. We'll segue from that just for a moment because we're going to talk about two wonderful astronauts, and one in particularly, the astronaut pin that the astronauts earn once they go to orbit. Okay, they get the gold pin. They have a silver pin while they're an ASCAN or astronaut candidate. And I have a little chart here just briefly to look at quick of the armed services, who has the most astronauts. Well, it's pretty much nip and tuck between the Air Force and Navy. They've had about equal numbers. Okay, this also shows the active and retired group, all right, but you put those together, you see that it's about the same. Marines are next. Hoorah for the Marine Corps. I think we counted 27 astronauts are in the Marines, and all the way down to the 2 Coast Guard astronauts, Bruce Melnick and the other one, Bruce Melnick, and escapes me, though I knew it at the time, but I do know Bruce personally, and he's proud of being the Coast Guard's first astronaut. Somebody tell me the other Coast Guard astronaut. Mark Thiel's pulling out the Christmas decorations for his lady. Bet some of you'll be doing that over the weekend. Have you done that already?
No, not yet.
Not yet? You got some decorations to put up for...
I don't put up much decorations anymore.
Yeah, I don't think any of us do.
Yeah, and especially lights. My kids come over, they'll put
Well,
up
if you have
stuff.
people that don't have people
Yeah.
come over, you live by
But,
yourself, well, whatever. But yeah, just a little traditional tree. In fact, I spent 3 Christmases with Marty, and I think we were lucky to have a Christmas card out, Marty. Things were so.
Okay, my phone.
We're not anti-Christmas at all, and we celebrate all religious holidays the way you want to celebrate them. Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or Festivus for the rest of us, if you're a
Yep.
Seinfeld fan. Marty, go ahead on that UCX family microphone.
Yeah, we got about 3 questions, Mark.
Oh, you 3
I
questions.
think it's 3. I have to go back and find them. Anyway, first one is from Dean Babcock. Gary, did you ever meet Robert Gilruth?
Robert who?
Gilruth.
Gilruth,
Oh, no, I never did. No, I'm sorry. Wish I had. But
Johnson Space Center.
No. I've made a couple trips to Houston, but I never met any of those people.
Uh-huh. And another one, Marty?
Yeah, this one, Mark, I wasn't going to ask it, but RG Jubilee is asking, so, because you have it behind you. She wants to know what's that rope is behind, the rocket behind you.
This
which is-
rope behind us
yeah.
here. We're going to talk
Yeah,
about that.
Yeah,
Here,
But I
just-
still think I'd wait, but
yeah.
in just a minute. We're going to talk about that in a minute there. This is from the Gemini 12 mission, the ending mission
Yeah.
there. We're going to get into here right now. Gemini 12 was landing 66 years ago. Okay. What's that I have there? Oh, there we go. There was a Falcon 9 was bragging about having launches 4 hours apart a couple months ago, or maybe last year. Well, we launched an Agena rocket at 2:07 p.m. as the target to dock with. That's what you see here, Rosalie, is that right there, and then an hour and 39 minutes later, one Earth orbit of the Agena rocket, they launched Jim Lovell and
Buzz Aldrin.
Buzz Aldrin. All right, at 3:46 in the afternoon, shown there on Gemini 12, which was, show you to you old school, the end. Talk about that, Gary.
Well, they pulled a little funny one on everybody, and that probably was Buzz Aldrin's idea. But they did each have a sign on the back. One was the, and the other one was the end, because this was the end of the Gemini program. And
Now look at the smile on this engineer
yeah.
here. Over here, look at that big smile on his
Yeah.
face there.
So it was just a little bit of a humorous part of the launch.
And, you know, we have our Mercury Gemini Gallery, and that's my favorite gallery because I was in junior high school in 1965 and 66. You were in college, right?
I was in high school, I think.
Oh, okay,
during
you
the
were in high school, not
Gemini
that
program. I
much.
didn't get to.
But the public today doesn't understand how exciting that was. Every 6 weeks was a launch going on. Every
Yes.
6 weeks was 2 men going to do something that we'd never done before in space because we had to learn these disciplines to go to the moon.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, when they launched Gemini 12, all right, Buzz Aldrin's going to do 3 spacewalks on it. I think 2 stand-up EVAs and a
Yep.
spacewalk, or might have been a couple more there. But how would you know that it was? How would you know that he was doing his EVA? What was the Twitter of the day or X of the day to find out? Because the news cycle was, you had NBC in the morning, all right. That was the only morning show. Local people had their own shows. National news in the morning. Then the evening was ABC, CBS, and NBC for half an hour. in local news, and that's it. Some they didn't have local local news was at the noon, of course, but you had Newsweek and Time Magazine and U.S. News and World Report were the weekly digests of what happened, and then your monthly beautiful life and look and so forth in there. But how would you know the quickest information about anything?
Well, it was kind of difficult. There was no capability to download photographs or pictures during the mission. That's something that we are kind of spoiled today, because we can see as we watch this launch take off, and we could see cameras that were mounted to the booster looking back, and you can see the Earth falling away. And we didn't have that ability back in the Gemini programs until we got into Apollo. But that was
So
basically, you had to wait for 6 o'clock in Florida for your national news, and that would get a little bit of information. It wasn't a lot, but that's what they would get. But the magazine coverages were much better, because most people back then always were subscribed to either Newsweek or Time Magazine, Life Magazine. So there was a lot of coverage through that part of it. And if you're a real geek, you had Aviation Week and Space Technology, so you would get that information.
there you go. But the Twitter of the day of the 1960s was AM radio.
Yeah.
At the top and bottom of the hour, you would get news, and that's how you would know the news thing. Of course, that's where you'd have somebody break in too, like with the Kennedy assassination. That was on radio and then on TV right
They broke
away.
in on Apollo 1 when I was coming back from. We had gone to a dance that night on the campus, and we was driving back about midnight after taking her back, my future wife, back to the house that she lived in, and I was in heaven, because I had her sitting next to me, listening to some nice music, and then they broke in and said about the fire and how the astronauts had perished. And I was devastated. I really was, because I followed it. I'd never realized that 18 months later, I would be standing exactly where that fire happened. And that was something I had no idea that it would ever come together.
When
like
you were
that.
hired as to be there, so why?
Yeah. Pardon?
Why were you there?
Well, I was lucky to be there. I had one individual in school that knew me and liked me, I guess. And NASA was coming to the campus for interviews. And he asked me if you need to go. And I said, no, I'm not going. They're looking for somebody that's an aeronautical, which we had aeronautical engineers, which I started out to be. And I did transfer back over to another program called aircraft maintenance engineering, where you get your airframe and power plants plus your aeronautical stuff. And I did, most of the aeronautical classes, but not the real advanced ones. And I said, nah, I'm not qualified for that. And so I told him I wasn't going to go. So when they did come to the campus, he came to my dorm, knocked on it, and says, "You're going." He grabbed me and took me.
Oh,
And so I went. Gradually, I went into the interview, 15 minutes maybe at the most. And the only thing I can remember out of that interview was when I got up to leave, he said, "If we offered you a job, would you accept it?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Never think I would hear anything. And sure enough, at Thanksgiving, I got a telegram from NASA saying they had an opening for me at a position at Kennedy Space Center. So that's how I got there. It's all by pure luck.
well, that's awesome, and we're glad it did happen.
Yeah,
like
I
that
am
for
too.
you. My daughter Jessie's watching with McKinley and Macy, my granddaughters. Hi there, girls. Dave Stangy's watching, of course. Let's see, Tom Celentano, he guessed AM radio correctly there. Well, this was a mission. We're going to talk about two other things they had to do, but we'll talk about the rendezvous here in a minute. But there's Jim Lovell, who just passed away at age 97, and Buzz Aldrin is 95 years old. His lovely wife just passed away. That's an unusual picture, them with cameras in their hands and the mock-up there, showing you how tight that is, okay, by the way, too. They both got flight ascots on there looking sharp on there. But what had to be done? What was the biggest bugaboo after 9 Gemini missions? What had they not solved about
The
going to the
hardest thing that they had to overcome out of all these missions that they flew was to learn how to do an extra vehicle activity, an EVA, and work out there. Starting with 9, Gene Cernan was supposed to go back, open the hatch, and then make his way back to the very back end of the Gemini spacecraft. And on the back side of that, where all of the Mylar was at, in the center was a jetpack. And he was to strap that on, release himself, and then kind of fly around. in
He even had
space.
special pants on that were
Yeah.
flame resistance on
Yes.
the back side.
Yeah. And what happened to him is, as he made his way back, their suits were air cooled, and the training that they were doing was inadequate. They were suspended from cables, or they would work on air tables,
Like air hockey.
like air hockey, to simulate working in space. And when Gene got back there, he got so overheated, and sweat came off of him, and it deposited on his face shield, and he couldn't see. It froze, and what he did was he pointed himself to the sun to get it to melt, and he was not very successful for that. But then Tom Stafford got a call from the control that they were monitoring his heart rate, and it was at the point of bursting.
Yeah, 175, something
Yeah.
like that.
And they said, bring him in right now. Unfortunately, they were also going into the dark side of the orbit. And so they really struggled to get him back in. And one of the things we've learned since then is they asked Tom, after he was walking on the beach, was one of the NASA managers, and he said, what would you have done if you couldn't get him in? He says, I had to leave him. And that's something that we don't think about, but anytime they do a spacewalk, if they can't get the gentleman or lady back into the vehicle, they have to leave them if they have to come back.
Yeah, and there was some conversation,
Yeah.
maybe in the White Room, that Deke went over to Tom Stafford. I mean, Jim Lovell.
Yeah. Jim
No,
Lovell,
I
yeah.
mean, Tom Stafford.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went over to Tom Stafford to remind him, hey, if you have to cut him loose if
Yeah.
something crazy
Something
goes.
can happen.
And it did. Lots of books written about it. You've all read about it. What sticks out in my mind is that the sweat pouring out of Cernan's body pooled in his feet up to about the middle of his calves.
Yeah.
Okay, he had so much water expelled there, and it was
Oh, yeah.
dramatically shown out at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex.
Oh, yeah.
In the Hall of Fame. They have a nice little video that depicts that.
When we did during the shuttle program, when we had programs that were extremely sensitive to contamination, we had to get in a bunny suit and we had to tape rubber gloves to us. And as you worked, the sweat off your hands would get in there, and it just felt horrible. You felt your hands were in the water the whole time. And then we was glad to get out of the room so you could pull that off and get all that water out of you. So when you're sealed like that, there's no place for it to go. So now, two things happen here. First of all, the Agena rocket that they rendezvoused with did not ignite, and so they had to abort that portion of the mission.
They were going to go up to an 800,
Yes,
900 mile
orbit.
and surpass what Pete Conrad and Gordon Cooper had done.
Now, Buzz Aldrin, he's the one that saved this whole thing.
Now here, let's look here first to set it up.
Yeah.
Here's C.C. Williams, we talked about the other
Yeah.
day, is the only Marine to die in active duty astronaut and killed in a T-38 jet crash, a mechanical failure.
Yeah.
This is on the Vomit Comet, where they would
Yeah.
duplicate a cabin there and get a few minutes or a few seconds of weightlessness there.
But that didn't
but
really
here's-
simulate. That didn't really simulate how the body reacts in a vacuum.
So Buzz Aldrin's he's a brainiac, Dr. Orbit, Dr. Rendezvous, super smart guy, and he, of course, never was shy to let you know that. He came up with the solution of training.
He came up with the solution. He had been a diver earlier in his career, and he talked to NASA, says, look, why don't we go into a pool of water, swimming pool, put the equipment in there, and we will practice in a neutral buoyancy type atmosphere would be exactly would simulate what's in orbit.
Yeah.
And so NASA agreed. He did two things.
If
One,
you're
that
going to
was
keep
one.
me alive in void of space, certainly
Yeah.
you can keep a guy alive in a
Yeah.
spacesuit in water.
And
so.
the other thing is, he says the air cooling is not working. We do need to go to water cooling. So that was his two compliments to
So
the
water cooling is
cooling. They wear a suit underneath, a garment underneath them that has water tubes all throughout it, and they pump water through there. That keeps you cool. Race drivers sometimes use these.
yes, they do.
and
Is it water
firefighters-
or like
It's water.
antifreeze?
No,
or
it's
hec-
water.
Okay.
It's water, as far as I know. And so NASA agreed to do that. And so what they did is they went to Baltimore, Maryland, and they went to an all-boys parochial high school and rented their pool for 2 weeks. And there's pictures showing them in there, and you can see the lines on the bottom of the pool for racing, swim races meets. And he practiced all three of his EVAs in that pool. And he was the only one of all the missions for the Gemini program. He was the only one that actually successfully completed his EVAs. And that was the key to get us to go to the moon. And once we did that, we said we found it, because we satisfies all the other one. We did the rendezvous, we did the docking. One of the things,
The duration of at
duration.
least 7 days in space, 3
8
days to
days,
the moon,
8
3 days
days.
back.
it was 8 days, 3 days to the moon, 2 days around, and 3 days back. We did a 2-week one to see how long we could stay in there. But the main thing was to develop fuel cells, and we started with 5. We did fuel cells. They weren't too successful in that mission, but by the time we got to the 2-week one, they had the fuel cells perfected. And the other thing that they really needed to do was learn how to steer the capsule as it re-enters the atmosphere. And they came up with the idea that we used in the Apollo program is you have an offset CG. It's not through the X center of the vehicle. With that offset, they can take it and they can, using the RCS engines, they can move it one way or the other, up and down, and that'll cause it to either go up so they can get longer range if they're short, or if they're running long, they'll point it down, so they'll come in a little bit steeper angle, and they can count it to make it go to the right or to the left. And they could have, I think, a box like landing box is like 200 something miles long that they could aim for in there, and like 80 miles on each side.
Mhm.
And once they perfected that, then that's how we were able to land close to the Care, especially in the Apollo program, because it was amazing to come back all the way from 243,000 miles and land within a mile or less next to the
That's
carrier.
amazing.
And that's how they
Scorching the atmosphere at
Yeah, did that.
25,000 miles an hour
Yeah,
in there. So Buzz Aldrin, truly, he was also Dr. Rendezvous.
Yeah.
He was the one that figured out
yeah,
that if you want to pass somebody in orbit, 2 objects go into the same orbit, how do you pass them? You drop down.
You
The
slow down.
gravity makes you go faster, and then you come back up.
because they learned that when I think the first time they launched, it may have been John Glenn's, I'm not sure. They said, "Can you see if you can?" They wanted them to go as close as they could to the trailing third stage that had put them in orbit.
Uh-huh.
And so he tried to go forward. He gave it some forward motion, and it ended up they started separating. And they didn't understand that, but then they finally figured out. And Buzz Aldrin had a PhD in orbital mechanics,
Yeah.
so they had, of course, they had figured it out by then. Is that to go to if you're sitting here side by side, to go and move forward, you don't. You slow it down, it brings you down, and you come underneath, and then you turn and you go up and you dock.
Hmm.
Okay, that's what
They always come underneath the ISS to dock on
come
it.
up and do
And,
that. So you
boy,
slow down to speed up, and you speed up to slow down.
boy, Butch and Sonny saw that in front of their eyes when
Yeah.
the thrusters weren't
Yeah.
working and they were drifting away from the docking collar, knowing that there wasn't a hook to grab them.
No,
They would have been gone. They
Yeah.
would have been gone.
That's
Buzzer, if you didn't know, did the first selfie from outer space.
Yeah.
You see him there with that gold visor on there. He turned the Nikon camera, I believe, around and clicked a picture of himself on a frame of film there. And you don't. It's often cropped a lot more. I found this full frame where you see his name I mean, the mission on the bottom, their mission patch, and that's the Agena rocket pole there. I guess that's the radar information.
Yeah, it's a target, I guess, or it gives them an
that.
information how far away they are.
But when you look at this spacesuit, okay, and you look at, there's no neck to it, okay, there's no, and actually, you don't, your head doesn't swivel with it like a race driver's helmet, okay. You're inside of it like a bubble, and when you're moving your head around, particularly in the Apollo ones, during the famous salute of Buzz on the moon, he's looking at Neil taking the picture of those faceplates facing the camera.
Well,
there.
they had a different. I think they had a helmet inside a helmet on the
Yeah,
Apollo
helmet
program.
inside of a helmet on that one they did. Yeah,
on the Apollo programs. Yeah.
But anyway, first selfie from space, pretty cool shot there. Buzz Aldrin there. So, and then the end of the program, I love this shot. They put a green dye in the ocean to be seen by airplanes coming over there. Look at that diver springing in the action with the antenna deployed up there.
Now, to point this out is the Gemini spacecraft was the only one that landed in the water horizontally. Everything else that we fly today lands with the heat shield down in the water first.
Another innovation. Worked 10 times beautifully.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we just have a couple of those in ready to go up and rescue people? You know, we abandoned the Gemini and the Apollo spacecraft that were tried and true, and I thought we should keep the Apollo in the queue for a safety net for future space stations.
I think there's a time limit or an age limit on stuff before you fly it into space. You don't want to take something that's kind of been old sitting around.
True. But
and you don't know the condition of it, and
but China's got a reserve for rescue for their Tiangong space station. So you just take it off the shelf and refresh it for what it needs to be done. But yeah, the batteries don't last forever and so forth. Gary, let's look real quick at the Gemini program before that. Marty's waving a question there from one of you good watchers today.
Yeah, we have 2 or 3 questions we can go back to later on. But Steve Holcomb is make a comment that I thought that photo was taken by Lovell. The one you call a selfie?
the selfie.
What's he question about the
He
selfie?
said
He said he thought Jim Lovell took that picture.
Well, no, it is for years it's been touted as a selfie that he took. All right. And I've seen it in NASA and other things like that. That's a selfie. This is Jim Lovell's pictures here. That's the beautiful shot Jim Lovell took right there. All right, that some people thought, but no, he's holding the camera on himself right there.
Yeah,
apparently,
that looks like a selfie
on there. So, Gemini, what a program! 10 missions, 1965 to 1966. You've got, of course, the first mission. Where does that start? There's supposed to be
3 would be Gus Grissom and John Young.
right on the left up there at the 11 o'clock
with the
position,
red
or 12,
with the red dot. That's his
and
now,
Molly Brown, but each one had a specific goal of things we had to accomplish on the moon. Of course, the first one, just everything working.
Yeah.
As you said, as we progressed, as you see the Gemini 8, they have just regular pilot crash helmets on because they had a special soft space suit that the upper portion of it was just a zipper pressurized with a faceplate on it so it could be more comfortable in space for that 14 days.
I think it was 7 that they did that.
Yeah, 7. If I said 6, I'm wrong. It was 7.
And that's
the
picture.
Of course, 7. 6 launched after 7, then rendezvous with.
Before you go too far, we need to talk about the rope. I don't think we're on 12.
No, we'll get there.
Are you going to get there?
Yeah, we'll get there. I just wanted to show a cutaway of the Gemini program. All right, how the astronauts were crammed in there. Think of your front seat of your car is a lot more roomier than Jim Lovell and Frank Borman had for 14 days. In fact, this is probably more separation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you'd want to spend 14 days next to me like
no,
this.
I wouldn't.
But you know, they didn't even do an EVA. They did because they didn't have a spacesuit that
No.
would do that. They didn't even open the doors to stretch. I mean,
No.
I can't believe they didn't get leg cramps and things like that. But it was.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have to go to the bathroom. Gary, would you mind turning your head that way for a few minutes? But I mean, the indignities of the human body, these astronauts endured
Endured quite a bit.
unabashedly.
And yes, they did. And
You were saying, sir.
well, I just going to point out again the reason why it landed horizontal. They had originally came up with the idea of actually landing the capsules horizontally out in the Mojave Desert.
Mm-hmm.
It had, they were envisioning landing gears.
Like a paraglider.
It had a paraglide. Well, it's called a Rogallo wing. It was a delta-shaped thing that they could pack. They could get it in there. The problem was when they did the drop test from a helicopter, sometimes it didn't deploy properly, and they basically gave up on it. But they came up with, kept the design of landing horizontally. And what's kind of unique about this, and it scared them, Buzz Aldrin, John Glenn and Buzz Aldrin when they did the first one, is they're on parachutes that are coming down vertically. And then at a certain altitude, there's a piece of ordnance that's on the cable that fires and flips it horizontally. And so that was when the Rogallo wing was supposed to come out, and then they had a little joystick, and he could fly around. And that's another reason for the injection seats, besides thinking that they could use them during launch and abort. But
They could do it during landing too.
yeah, they could. Yeah, if it was going to crash, they could. Yes, they could do that. But like I said, we didn't like the injection seats for several reasons. One is if they had to do it on the launch pad, they would come out on fire because their suits are full of oxygen
right.
because they've been sitting in oxygen. And they never tested it. But I think when the designers said, hey, the Russians are doing this. This is how they get out of the Vostok spacecraft with ejection seats. But they're using 14.7 dual atmosphere, so they didn't have to worry about the oxygen issue. And I think they kind of overshot that, just didn't think about it.
Rendezvous was mastered with
Yes.
the Agena rocket here. Okay, this picture here showing you several phases of the Gemini that they had to the docking and rendezvous because we were going to land. We're going to take 2 spacecraft to the moon, one orbit permanent, the mothership, and then the 2 astronauts go down the lunar module. So that was important, and that worked out pretty easily. They had that mastered. Also, you can't underestimate how mission control that was moved from Kennedy Space Center in Gemini 5 or something like that over to Houston had a whole. They had to learn themselves
That's
about
right.
how to conduct a mission and follow it for days and so forth. So how are you going to keep the team fresh 24 hours, and who's going to be doing that, and who's the boss, and so forth. There were all the goals on there, and here is the Agena rocket in space. Okay,
And the nozzle's on the left for the rocket, and then on the very right, that's the docking system.
no, this is docking system.
No, that's the fire end. The docking system is on the other end.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Trust me, because I originally thought the same thing as you
No,
did.
it's not because you got the pole there
No, that's
that you see when they dock with.
No,
I'm pretty sure about that. All right.
no, I'll
All right.
I don't have the model here, but no, it is the other way around, Mark.
Okay.
Okay. And
All
here
right.
they're doing. They did this test also on I think 11, where they tied the tether to it. And the object is here is to see if they could pull them apart and have an artificial gravity go around. And it sort of worked. They couldn't generate a whole lot. It was like less than a G that they did that. We did the same type of thing in the shuttle program where we actually did a tethered satellite. We did 2 of them. The first one didn't work very well, but second one did, but it was a satellite, was a round ball, had a bunch of probes sticking out of it, and what they were trying to do is generate electricity flying through the lower atmosphere,
And they did.
but
Andy
not enough.
Allen was a pilot and a commander of that
yeah.
mission. STS-77
Yeah.
was one of them.
So that was a kind of unique thing, and but it wasn't, that really wasn't required for the going to the moon, but that's was something that they threw in there.
Well, they were thinking of a space station and
well,
creating
yeah,
gravity here, and
yeah.
they did create gravity.
Just a little
Like
bit, not
going
much.
around there, but then abandoned, like the tethered
Yeah.
satellite was abandoned. Just like we did have a drone that Winston Scott actually deployed
Yeah,
on his mission 72, and this drone had its own little thrusters on it and
we
so
flew, I
forth.
think, one in the space station
Flew,
too.
flew around. And why didn't they keep that in a locker there, and then they could have looked at the damage on Columbia with the
That
drone
would have
with
been
cameras on it?
that would be a good solution.
I
but
mean, instead of having a robotic arm and adding another 50 feet to it, why didn't they just pull that drone off
Well,
the shelf
we
or
didn't
two
have-
of them as a backup and say, we'll use that?
I don't know if we had the technology. We didn't have Bluetooth. We didn't have that kind of capability back in the early shuttle days, or any shuttle days. And also, at least in Gemini, we didn't have that.
Well, I
So
don't know about that.
I-
In 1966, we got Videocon images from a Ranger crashing into the moon. That was,
Well, that's a
in
little
there.
bit different than flying an object that you're trying to control.
yeah.
Radio frequencies, and so they just didn't think about it at the time that we would have those things. It wasn't until late 20s, in the 20s, 22, 23, when we came up with the remote things we have today that we fly around. My son has one. He can fly that thing and ride his
Yep.
bicycle at the same time, and I'm
Those
just
drones are
amazed.
amazing.
Yeah, the drones.
Well, there you have that is Rosalie. That tether is there's. I don't think there's any wires or anything going through it. It's just
no,
like
it was just a tether, and on 11, Dick
What was
Gordon,
it made out of? Do you think?
I was probably nylon. I don't know, but on
Well,
11,
how about old fire hose or something?
no,
like
it wouldn't
that?
be that. But
Okay.
on 11, Dick Gordon had a very hard time. He overheated trying to get it up, but he did hook it up on 11. But he almost had to come in because he was overheated. But they did do that. But 12 was the actual one that really said we can go to the moon, because the thing we thought would be easy was actually the hardest.
Yeah, the spacewalking.
The spacewalking
Yeah,
was.
We really did.
Yeah. And the Russians had the same issues, and
They did.
so.
Now the beautiful ICBM. This was the rocket that was in silos around
Yeah.
America with nuclear warheads on it. There's the picture from 6 took of 7 in orbit when Wally Schirra and Tom Stafford rendezvoused with them. There you see the landing that you're talking about in the green. Just an incredible 2 years.
It was exciting.
And during this 2 years in the moon race, 65 to 66, Russia did not orbit a single person.
Oh, really?
Okay,
Yeah.
no. And their 1967 Soyuz, the Voskhod was right at the end of Voskhod 2. It was the last one with the spacewalk until Soyuz 1 when Komarov got killed in it.
Yeah.
And then they had that down there. So they'd already lost the moon race. So, and of course you have the angry alligator.
See, that's the docking system.
There's the docking system right there. Yeah. They couldn't get to the docking system. This was a shorter version of it because.
Well, this is the actual one, Mark. It's just it didn't have the Gina rocket attached to it. Because
Okay.
the Atlas blew up on the pad, or as soon as it took off, and they were kind of panicking. And they said, "Well, we have an extra docking system sitting around. We can put it on an Atlas, and we can do it very quickly, and we can make the timeline that we had already established for when we was going to launch Apollo Gemini 9." And unfortunately, they missed a step in the closeout, and it left the strap on. It didn't. I don't know if they hook up. There was a cable that didn't separate. But anyway, when they got up there, they couldn't dock with it. They call it the angry alligator.
Mhm.
So, but that's when Gene Cernan then had to go do the EVA, which was the second part of that mission. And so it was a total failure basically for what they were going to accomplish
Yeah,
on that
9 was
particular
not
mission.
a good mission.
No, it was not.
Also, when you saw 5 and 6 or 6 and 7 pictures come back, it had these trailing straps
Mm-hmm.
that when I looked at it and Look magazine or whatever,
Yeah,
I'm
they
going,
were always
wait,
there. Yeah.
wait, what's that all about? Did they
That
know
was
that would
I
be
don't
there?
yeah I don't know what they were for. Electrical connections, but yes, they always had these straps hanging out underneath, which makes it very dangerous for the EVAs if they have to go out.
Yeah.
And this thing could whip around, or they could get caught in it, and so I don't know if they ever really cleared it up during the Gemini program, but that was an issue, at least for the two that rendezvoused up there.
Well, an amazing chapter of American space history. I can't read enough books about Gemini and the stories that are told in there. We honor this at Spaceview Park at the Gemini monuments, but I'll have to go out and take a new picture because these pylons that have the handprints and likenesses of the other astronauts that we didn't get handprints of are gone. They were gotten so deteriorated by the sea air, even though this is on the Indian River. We had some problems with one of them falling down. Actually, it was John Young's at the very end, and we're glad nobody stole John Young's handprints. They were just kind of laying there when somebody called me about it. So there are some big structures that had trees in them around there that we're going to put the handprints on there. But unfortunately, this idea of over 20 years ago, the rebarb inside was not it rusted inside and out. It wasn't the proper rebarb, and they were all going to come down. And so our Spaceview Park is owned by the city of Titusville. It is maintained by the county, Brevard County work crews, and we get all the phone calls. Okay. So that looks different out there, unfortunately, and we're trying to influence the city to maybe build other pylons there, but they're going to have to be stainless steel, like the two there representing Gemini there. But we honor them. And thank you, Gary, for being here today. If you don't have anything to do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, why don't you come out to the Native Rhythms Festival at Wickham Park in Melbourne? It's going to be free. Get your Native American on there. All kinds of things going on, including I'm doing a talk on Saturday at 5:45 on star lore and Native Americans. And sunset's about 5:30. We're going to do a little star talk and emphasize some of the Native American legends, and then have a star party with the telescopes there, so a few telescopes. So, Gary, thank you so much for wonderful insight today. All right, and want to go out with the selfie, the first selfie taken in outer space, a Buzz Aldrin buzzer. By the way, you know how he got his nickname Buzz?
No.
Well, because I'm calling him Buzzer, because that's what his little sister called him.
Oh.
She couldn't say
Edwin.
Yeah, she couldn't say Edwin or Ed, and she called him Buzzer. And so and then of course he changed his name legally during the Buzz Lightyear days of Walt Disney there at that popular cartoon series there. But that's where that came from, was from his sister calling him Buzzer.
That's quite common.
Yeah.
I know several people that have nicknames that because their siblings, the youngest one, couldn't pronounce their name.
Yeah.
I have one that was called Ooper. And I go, what the heck? How did you get Ooper? And they said their little daughter could not pronounce the name of her older brother, but just called him Ooper from Ooper. It was a cartoon character, I think, with some kind of an Ooper in it. And so he kept that name. That was his nickname. That's all I knew him by. I didn't know his real name. Ooper.
Huh.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy, and so forth. So thank you, Go History Travel, for supporting us today. Marty, you gave me did you give me a list? Yes, you did right here. Any questions that we missed over there? I see Ace Boogie Stacks is watching. And we've got Dave, Mia. Hi, little Mia. Mia joins us there with my granddaughters Macy and McKinley. Macy's going to be 2 years old next week. So, no, this weekend. Happy birthday, Macy. And let's see, we got Freeway of Other is watching, Mostly Parked. Frank Kilner. John Doe BQ1XT is watching. Did you say you had a question, Marty?
We have 4 questions.
All right, go ahead. Let her rip.
Okay, first one is from Ace Boogie Stacks. And he says, what about Zebulon Scoville? And I think he's referring to the other notable NASA and
Who?
contractor,
Who's the name?
Zebulon Scoville.
There was a Don Scoville, but that was not a Debbie. Don Scoville was my boss, my branch chief.
I looked up, I think it's a JSE person.
Okay, well, we had that at Kennedy. We had Don Scoville was my first division branch chief is when I worked at NASA.
My next question, would Gary like to be starting his career today with Blue Origin or SpaceX, or was early NASA a special time to work?
Well, NASA was definitely a special time to work at that time. I don't know, Elon Musk, I think he's a pretty good taskmaster, and I don't think I could put up with the hours and the time that they used along. It's a different atmosphere, different time. The shuttle was actually the most fun to work on because it was so big and had so much to do, and really kept you occupied with the missions. I enjoyed it so much, especially I would get together with the payload committee maybe 5 years before they launched, and when they came down to Kennedy, and I would walk them through what access they could get and not have in the payload bay, and they just ate that up. And so, and it sometimes they had to go change their design of their payload to make based on what I told them, and so that was fun. I would go back to the Apollo days, even though, like I said, like Mark says, we get our butts chewed out if we didn't do it right, and there's a lot of stress. A lot of people struggle. Some people struggle with it. We had a lot of divorces in the program, but great set of people to work with, technicians that were just absolutely just great. We do them personally. Sometimes we would go out with them, and the other engineers, we'd socialize with everybody, and so those were good days. We didn't have to watch our P's and Q's. We could say what we wanted. We could tell some nasty jokes, and we could tell some funny jokes. We pulled a lot of pranks. Some of them most of them were funny. Some of them had a thing behind them that says, "You are not doing your job properly," and we pulled a prank to kind of push you into doing your job properly.
All right. Yes, a couple great comments there. Dean Babcock, thank you. Marty the Buzzer, calling him Buzzer. His sister couldn't say brother. That's what she was trying to say, was brother. And she said Buzzer, and it just kind of stuck.
That really does make sense to me.
It was brother there. Thank you all for that. Good group watching today, as usual. The most intelligent group of viewers on YouTube, without a doubt, with one of our most intelligent guests that you ever see on YouTube. That man and woman that we listened to the other day.
Oh, that's the other day.
We think it was AI generated and just a real cavalier,
and we get
disrespectful of the tragedy, and it was just be careful with what you watch.
And in January, when we do talk about the Apollo 1 fire, we will go through that just a little bit, and explain where they were totally wrong, what they believed. It's two people. It's real people. They were born probably way after the fire, and just reading documents, they thought they knew everything, and they made some judgments that were not proper.
Well, Gary, always fun having you here as our people watching today. Oh, we got something else Marty wants to say on that UCAC family microphone.
Okay, question from David Palmer. Would Gary like? I'm sorry, wrong question. Hang on. From Dean Babcock. How did the thrusters Neil fired on Gemini 8 stop the violent spinning?
There's two sections to the service module, which is the white area that you see. And I don't have a picture here. I could have brought one if I'd have known the question, but it separates in two pieces. The furthest one aft, with the largest one, contained the batteries, the oxygen tanks, and the communication boxes.
The white section.
The
there.
white section there. And it has roll, pitch, and yaw engines on it, and it also has for forward, aft, and side to side. Those engines were not strong enough to overcome the rates of the rotation around. And Neil Armstrong recognized that, and what he did was went ahead and ejected that, just like if he was going to re-enter the atmosphere. And that exposes the retro package that's inside the second portion of that, the smaller cone section. But it also had larger thrust engines. And so he was able to stop the roll using that. Now, when he did this all out of contact with Earth, with ground stations and control room. When they found out, when he finally made communication, said this is what happened, they said, oh, wait a second, you got to come in right now because you lost your batteries, you lost a lot of your, they still had the surge tank in the capsule itself to keep them from an oxygen-wise, to keep them alive. And they had batteries in there that could keep the communications up. But the main portion had to be, it was gone. So they had to come in immediately. And what that meant was, instead of landing in the Atlantic where they had the aircraft carrier to pick them up, they ended up landing in the Pacific, and they were picked up by a destroyer. They're the only ones in the whole program that was picked up by a destroyer.
Mm-hmm. Those thrusters were in the nose there that he used. For
No, they were not. Those were in the white section. They have that's what they use now. The other thrusters that are actually on the
what failed was in the white section.
well,
and what
yeah.
he saved was in the nose section for reentry. And
well, they have their own set of life support system just in the capsule itself after they've ejected the two sections of the service module. Okay, and that's what he did. Now the controller was probably in the capsule itself, controlling the thrusters back in the aft, and one of them stuck open.
we have that
And
electronic
we had,
piece in here.
we have that piece
that
here.
has a. It had to be. If we have it, it had to be.
It was in
underneath that Renee shingling there.
Yeah, it was there somewhere inside the metal, the heat shield.
But good. Glad that we. Glad that we.
Good question. Very good question.
Enjoyed looking back at Gemini program. I think it's not talked about enough. The cadence that we did.
Yeah.
The training that was so intense. Because this program had to work right, or we were not going to fulfill President Kennedy's goal
we wouldn't have went to the
by
moon.
1969. And of course, we're going to talk tomorrow about doubling down on that with the launch of Apollo 12. We celebrate on November 14th, 1969. Marty, anything else over there? We've got somebody thinks I'm right again there. I know my Gemini stuff pretty well. You need to go look.
What did
because
you, what you got right?
this is the docking port.
No, it is not. It is
right.
not. It is the rocket engine itself.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I disagree, and we'll be gentlemen like that. But I've got a whole bunch of people agreeing with me.
Well, they're wrong.
So we'll look it up. You look it up. I'm not going to look it up.
I don't have to look it up. I know.
Well, I had Mad Don Arabian tell me himself. And why would this pole be so close to
That's just a rocket.
Buzz
That's
in this picture if that wasn't a docking?
well, that's you know how photography is. They can do a
I do,
zoom.
and you wouldn't see that if it was at the other end. It'd be too far away.
If it's a close up and that's in the back, he can't tell the distance from where it's at. Okay. But trust me, the docking system is on the other side. A Gemini 9 showed you the docking system. It didn't have that big engine on it.
All right. Well, we'll end with that. Okay. As
Yeah.
everybody gets their research there. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we had you on today talking about some cool space history on there. And I'll learn something again that I didn't know before on there. So thank you, everybody, for watching today. Marty, you got anything else to clean up over there?
I probably missed a question somewhere, but I think we're good.
Well, we've had a good discussion here, and thank you all so much. Gary's working on some other shows that we'll have. Okay, here having back on here in a couple of weeks. He's a docent on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you're in town, come and get one of the best tours anyone ever gives here at our Space Museum. So thank you, buddy,
You're
for
welcome.
being here today. Marty, thank you for another great show today. And tomorrow's TGIF, we'll look back and see how that new Glenn performed, as well as look back at space history 56 years ago when we'll be celebrating Apollo 12's launch to the moon, hit by the lightning, all that stuff. We did talk about that on Tuesday with
Dick? No.
Steve
Oh,
Agate.
Steve, yeah,
Steve
Steve
Agate show pretty much did a capsulization on that. And I'd really like to do some backyard astronomy tomorrow to get you all outside on some moonlit fall evenings there and look at some beautiful stars, planet Saturn and Jupiter up there. So until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette, thanking Gary Allgire for a great show, Gary Gerald for watching, and telling you, the rest of you, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
To do what? To bridge
The
the
space
space between
between
us. Thank you so much.